What's going on, everybody? This is Milton Spence with Milt's Culture Corner. I am back. I took last week off because I wanted to make sure that I attended the American Black Film Festival. That film festival in itself was a beautiful experience, considering all of the star power that was in the building, and not just that, the way that I was able to spend that weekend doing things that I love, being around what I love, and also being able to look what I love in the eye and be able to express myself to it in the most optimal fashion possible. There's nothing better than to give yourself over to what you love completely. And there's nothing better than to do what you love and be exactly the way that you want to be. So I want to say, excuse me. And second of all, I'm getting over a cold, but I do want to say that it is of utmost importance that I let you guys know something very serious and near and dear to my heart, is that I love everything that I do. And not just that, I love the people that love me for doing what I do and for giving me the opportunity to continue to be there and here for you guys. I appreciate any and everybody who allows me the space and the time to be myself and allows me the space and the time to accept and being their self. I thank you guys so much for the peace that you give to me in doing these things and doing this podcast and doing my short films and doing everything that I'm doing at the moment. And I thank you guys for not just patting me on the back, but also for everybody who keeps it real with me and lets me know their honest and goodness opinion based upon what I do. Thank you guys very much. You have to excuse me, I'm clearing my throat because also last week I'm getting over a cold. If you can't tell, when you have two little kids, this thing can definitely happen, and it definitely does happen. I want to say that in my quest to find a co-host for the podcast, I am hoping to narrow it down and find the person or people that I would love to have on the podcast. It is something that I put up to prayer, and I allow God to, come into it and try to help me with it, because I have to say to you all honestly, it is one of the tougher things that I ever thought that I would have to do, because to share your space with somebody, especially sharing something that's an idea that God initially gave you, is tough. It's very tough to do. And I am one of those people that's not against when God changes waves or God changes paths. I'm not against it, but I can't say that it's the easiest thing on earth to do. I also must say that I'm grateful for each and every person who takes out the opportunity and time to give themselves over to their gifts and their passions, doing things that they're called to do, loving themselves in spite of, and giving themselves over to what it is that they want to actually do. Now, this episode, as well as many others, I post this on YouTube. I post it on Spotify. This will be on Apple Podcasts. Shout out to everybody on every other podcast platform out there. I'm coming to find that Spotify and Apple Podcasts, although are large names, they are not the most popular podcast platforms. And I'm guessing they're trying to change that in the sense that, gaining more people. My request and my ask is, if you see this video, if you see it up to this point, if you like the podcast, feel free to please leave me a review, leave a like, leave a comment, anything that helps me to begin to gain more notoriety. Remember, no business is built without a consumer, and I am nothing without you guys. And I'm nothing without anybody who supports me and gives me the open opportunity to be able to put out my voice and to do the things that I am called to do. I can't do it without you guys. Ultimately, yes, I can't do it without God, but God didn't put me here by myself. If he did, then this technically would be pointless, because I'd be talking to myself. So because I'm not talking to myself, and because I am putting this out here, I'm asking for you all to support me in making sure that you tap a like button, share it, leave a review, whatever it is, leave a comment, however it is that you guys can definitely help me get my podcast and all things that I do out there. And if there's anything that I can support you with in return, whether it be obvious or not, please be sure to bring it to my attention, and I will do my best to support it in return. And that does not mean that I won't. It just means that I also have other things going on that push and pull at me. But you will see me giving you the support. It may not be exactly when you send the message or exactly when you bring it to my attention, but it will happen nevertheless. Okay. So thank you guys so much. Also, I want to move forward in speaking on something that I have been challenged with on this podcast. And this is not like my normal podcast. This is a little bit different in the sense of what I wanted to speak on. Right. Normally I have subjects and things I want to talk about. And because I skipped a week, it gave me the opportunity to think. It gave me the opportunity to assess, and it gave me the opportunity to put myself in a position where I no longer want to just do this in the sense of talking to myself. Obviously, I want that co-host, but I think I want to do this more interactive thing where the audience, in a sense, chooses the subject, and then we speak on what the audience wants to speak about, or we speak on several subjects that the audience wants to speak about, because that gives us the opportunity to be able to answer questions. Now, what happens in that is that sometimes the questions come in at a vast amount, and you're able to answer a limited amount within the time that you guys have allotted, considering that you and the co-host didn't have, a different life. But nevertheless, you do your best to try to answer it. Now, I want to do that because I believe that it would help with interaction. And another idea I had was to do it where I do this live, where I do this podcast live, and then obviously we have an audience and be able to speak to the audience as they are looking at us live. That within itself is also, I think, beneficial, but I don't know. It's just something I'm tossing out there, and feel free to let me know exactly what you guys think on that, if you have a thought on it whatsoever. Let's jump into this though. I don't have a specific topic in mind, but some different thoughts that have come up in the time of me having to do this podcast and in the time of me doing this. One thing that has come to mind is the fact that we are all in a space and a time, number one, where we're hearing about the submarine. We're also in a time and space where we're also hearing about more and more detrimental news. Now, if you remember, the news used to be something that was segregated to the couch of your grandmother's house or your grandfather or whomever. The older people in the family always knew the news because it was subjugated to just them. It was just on their television. Now we all have televisions in our hands. So essentially what we are having is an existential crisis all the time. And it's right there in our face to the point where we can't even escape it. So because we can't escape it, because we can't do anything with it, we now have to subjugate ourselves to be able to accept exactly what's in our face. And I'm here to tell you guys that I believe wholeheartedly that this, not just within itself, but this is what is a part of the plot to not just essentially take us down mentally, but to also take us down spiritually and physically in many ways. Because if you as a human being constantly feel like something is wrong, if you constantly feel like there is no upside, then you yourself begin to operate as if it is not there. You begin to operate as if there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And you also begin to operate as if there's nothing that you can do in order to win this over, to do this better. You begin to operate like that. And what happens to you is that you begin to sit still. Now, if you guys know anything, and if you heard any saying, you will have heard your grandma or somebody else in the family who's a little bit older say, an idle mind is the devil's playground. And if you hear them say that, that's because of the fact they know what it is to also be lazy or to be able to sit still. And they also know oppression, and they also know things that come with wisdom and experience. So I'm here to let you guys know something very, very, very serious. An idle mind is the devil's playground. If your mind is idle and it's stuck on things that do not serve you to propel you forward. Now, remember, a lot of us are trying to make life happen. A lot of us are not trying to embrace life. So because we're not trying to embrace life, because we're trying to make life happen, the propeller always ends up being something that's within us that we are making, versus allowing the things that are meant to make us go forward, propel us, push us. We are normally responding to things and not embracing things. When you embrace something, right, It's kind of like you embrace your children, or you embrace your spouse, or you embrace yourself. You begin to understand things about it that are not said. You begin to understand things about it that are not necessarily, you just begin to understand things about it that are understood. It's weird to say, but it's like you begin to have this relationship with that thing, person, or whatever that you are embracing, and you start to see, wow, I literally, not figuratively speaking, but I actually do have a relationship with this person or being, in the sense that this person and being is now what I am, and I am it, and we are one. Right? Most of us run from things, but when we embrace things, it allows us to now allow that thing or that person or situation or whatever to propel us. When we allow it to propel us, we now also put ourselves in a position, in a space, in a spot where we put ourselves first, and we allow that thing to now take us to a different height and a different level. I am, for one, of the school of thought that there's nothing in this life that is meant to hold us down, but everything is meant to push us forward. I believe that we allow the things to push us down if we don't resist the things that are meant to hold us down. Like the word says, to resist the devil and he will flee. It's not that the devil won't come, because he will, but he's not meant to, right, have you. It's your duty to resist. There's an opposite. The opposite of that is to embrace. You have resistance, and then you have embrace. You ever seen somebody, they resist until they understand that what they're doing, they're fighting against something that they can't win. And then what do? They embrace the fact that either they're going to lose this battle, or they embrace the fact that they're fighting against something that they can't win, and they go ahead and give into that which is good for them. It's the total opposite. That's what I'm talking about it, because embracing what you're meant to do, embracing people, embracing the things that you have, also mean that you forego the things that have nothing to do with that. And what happens is you're put into a position all the time. You're constantly looking at your phone, and you're constantly seeing news that is not necessarily good for you, and you begin to embrace it. And now that makes you idle, and so that also makes you susceptible to being controlled. You're controlled by the narratives that others have painted for you, versus being in tune and in tap with yourself. And now you're only in tune and in tap with what's going on social media. That's the same when it comes down to your career. It's the same when you're trying to stay in the know when it comes down to whatever it is that you love to do. It's the same. So I personally have been of the school of thought that when it boils down to it, what you need to be embracing in your life wholeheartedly is things that only serve where you're trying to go in your life, not where you currently are, not exactly what you're trying to just to accomplish, but where you're trying to go. Now, the reason I say go is because there's a lot of us. Here's the point of being idle, right? There's a lot of us are idle, and there's a lot of us who are trying to move. People who are idle are very dangerous people due to the fact that they have nothing within them that propels them, right? They have nothing within them that propels them. They have nothing that is happening to them outside that propels them, because they may be idle due to the factor of the blockages that they've put in front of themselves, aka distractions. The distractions that you have within yourself are also what don't allow you to move on to other levels and do other things that now can serve you, in the sense of, this serves me because I have embraced it. It's like getting into a vehicle with no gas. The car can only serve you if you do what you need to do for it. You have to embrace exactly what that vehicle needs in order for it to serve you. If you don't do what needs to be done for the vehicle, then it cannot serve you. It can only be what you put into it, right? And if you're distracted, if you don't pay attention to the signs that it gives you, if you don't pay attention to what it's telling you that it needs from you, then eventually it won't serve you. So a lot of us are not being served, and because we don't embrace exactly what we need to in order to make sure that we get to where we need to and do the things that we're meant to. Do not be a slave to the stuff that's coming out here. Please, I'm begging you to not be a slave to what is happening out here, because what exactly is happening is mind numbing. It numbs you. It numbs you from being able to do the things that you're called to do. And it also numbs you from being able to do the things that you're meant to do, because the things that you're meant to do are not going to be mind numbing. It's only going to be mind accentuating. It's only going to fulfill you and push you forward in your purpose and give you more and more purpose. That's all things that are meant for you are going to do. The greatest part, or the greatest gift that you can give yourself, is to give yourself over to your design and to your purpose of your life. That's the greatest thing that you can do. The reason we have this podcast now is because of the fact that that's the journey I'm on. My entire life has been spent answering the call to other people, whether it be coaches, ladies, whether it be, my mama, my grandma. It has never really been a answer to call about Milton. And in that regard, sometimes you look a little selfish because you begin to do things that are good for you. But what happens is, because you look selfish, because you're starting to do things that are meant for you, people begin to, sometimes resist you. And that's not a shout to my mom or nothing like that, but it is, or my grandma or nobody else, but it's just the truth. And when I say people, I don't just mean people that you know, not just in your immediate family. It could be people that you have no idea who they are. They begin to respond to you in ways that are detrimental to your growth, because if they do not appreciate your growth, if they do not see where you're going, then they will only do one or two things, and that is to let you down. And they will also try to block you from where you're supposed to go, because if they can block you, that means they can keep the company of you. Remember, misery does love company. That is very true, but also does love and peace. Love and peace love company as well. So we have to be able to give ourselves over and doing the things that we're called to do, versus just doing things that we think we should be doing based upon the fact of how we feeling or whatever the case may be and what's going on today. Sure, I'm not asking you to give up your human side, but I'm also asking that you give yourself over to the things that are not existential crises. I'm asking that you give yourself over to things that don't pull out stress from you and don't make you want to pull your hair out. If you have things that you're holding on to that do that to you, I ask that you please go get professional help. Go see a counselor. Go talk to people who can really, really help you, a therapist. Anybody who can help you be able to be a better person is better than the people who can't do anything for you due to the fact that they don't have a stake in who and what you are. They don't have a stake in your greatness. They don't have a stake in you being the best version of yourself. They only have a stake in them being the best version of themselves based upon you not doing anything that is worth your time. So I'm asking you, my friend, my people listening to the podcast, please do what you need to do for yourself in order to make sure that you get to where you need to be. And when you do that, what you will do is you will turn yourself over to the person who you were meant to be. There's a part of you right now that's full of energy waiting on you to finally embrace it. And if you don't do that, then you will forever and ever and ever be a subject and a slave to what it is that you are in versus affecting and going towards what you need to be doing. Okay. Next thing I wanted to cover is the fact that of love. I hosted a live this week, this week, hosted a live on TikTok this week. And the question that I posed to everybody was, what is unconditional love and how do you do it? The answers I got varied, but the constant was unconditional love is only given based upon what I can get from it. And it's also given based upon if somebody deserves it. Now, the biggest thing with that is that if you really want to be honest, then you have to say no one deserves unconditional love. If you really want to be honest, nobody deserves that which is unconditional love. Not me, not you, nobody. The thing about unconditional love is that it has no condition. So that means it's given based upon not deservability, but it's given based upon the fact that it's love. There is no, I'm going to love you only if you. I'm going to love you only when you. It's unconditional. So because it is unconditional, you have to give yourself over to the fact that, and embrace the fact that the love that you give, the love that you give to the people, the love that you give to anybody else besides your children, right? Your dogs and stuff like that. The love that you give over to people you had no hand in raising, purchasing, whatever the case may be. I didn't mean to say purchasing people. Y'all, let's edit that out. I'm joking. But the people you have had no hand in or control in, that's when your unconditional love has to show its face. Because you have to be able to love those people even though they spite you, even though they may do stuff to you, say stuff about you, be a certain way. I didn't say, oh, you gotta be their friend. I didn't say, oh my God, you gotta hang with them. I did not say that. I said, you have to love these people. If you do not love them, then you are only a subject to what they have given, and you're only a subject to what they have taken. You're not giving them anything. You're not loving yourself more because you decide to give yourself more than what they've taken from you. You only decide to love yourself more when you decide to love them in return, regardless of how they treated you, because the same way they've mistreated you, you're also that to someone else. Maybe not in the same level, maybe not the same way, but you're also that to someone else. So it behooves you that if you actually want to give unconditional love and receive unconditional love, it's best that you plant those seeds. If you don't plant those seeds, then in return, all you receive is conditional love. Most of us want to be loved unconditionally, but we don't want to do it because it's tough to love without condition when you have a person or people who do not give to you that ability to be able to not only receive it, but to give it freely. It's not easy to give, because when you love someone without condition, you're making a conscious effort to tell that person, I'm going to love you in spite of what you've done or said or thought of or whatever of me. I'm going to love you in spite of. And that is the hardest thing to do. I swear to you guys. Love within itself is a great testimony to the way that we've treated ourselves. Love within itself is a great testimony for the way we've treated ourselves. The way that is because when you have loved yourself, or when you love yourself, that means you have the unconditional fortitude to do that regardless of whatever it is that you have done. When you do not do that, you now do not have that to give. So my plea, please, for all of you, give yourself over to loving yourself regardless. Loving yourself regardless. The way you love yourself is to not love yourself through the lenses of what you see from others, but based upon what you honestly see from with yourself. Loving yourself regardless. Love always drives out hate. And a lot of times the reason why we struggle in relationships is because we do have a lot of self-hate. We do have a lot of self-anguish. We do have a lot of self-centeredness to the point we cannot love fully. We can't love others fully because we are struggling to honestly love ourselves. We're honestly struggling to love ourselves. We're honestly struggling to give ourselves over to what has no condition. Unconditional love means you do it without a condition. You do it without, you don't care how they act. You don't care what they say. You care what you do. You care how you treat them. You care what you say to them. You don't care how they respond to you. You only care how you respond to them. You understand? So if we were to focus on that individually, right? Doing the right thing by each other. If we were to focus on that individually, how hard would it be for the relationship to actually survive negative things coming to it? Because we would only be focused on loving each other unconditionally, meaning we love ourselves without condition, meaning we only do things that we would want done to us, meaning we would give ourselves over to the unconditional love and not do anything to harm that. We wouldn't do anything to harm that. That right there is not easy to do. And that's why so many people fail at it, because it's easy to take away. It's easy to take away. It's easy to run. That's easy. It's hard. It is very, very hard to give yourself over to what is that is unconditional. It's hard to give yourself over to what is that is unconditional. And it's very hard to give yourself over to what it is that you cannot control. For the love of God, I'm asking you guys to stop trying to control every single aspect of the love that you give or don't give. Stop trying to control it. If you really want to love, then start with yourself, loving yourself without condition. And if you love yourself truly, you will focus in on doing the right thing by yourself, essentially focusing in on doing the right thing by your partner. And if your partner unconditionally loves you, they're going to love you regardless, because they're going to realize that same imperfection that you just showed, they have it in them too in some form or fashion. You only can drive out hate through loving each other through the negative. It's easy to love good stuff. Very easy. Loving each other through the negative gets you by everything. And it's a building block. When something negative comes against you, it's meant to be a building block. That's why the devil is always busy, because he just wants you to set yourself up. He throws you an alley-oop, and it's up to you if you want to dunk that ball that has spikes on it. That's up to you. It's totally up to you. You don't have to give over yourself to the temptations or the evils. You have to give yourself over to everything that is love. You have to give yourself over to everything that is love. Let's see. Let's look up the definition of love as it relates to what the Bible says about it, because I love what the word says about love in the sense of what it is, right? In the sense of what it is. Let's look it up. Let's go to Let's go to it. Let's start with 1 Corinthians 1:13 and 4. Love endures with patience and serenity. Love is kind and thoughtful, and it is not jealous or envious. Love does not brag, and it is not proud or arrogant. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not provoked, nor overly censored and easily angered. It does not take into account a wrong endured. It does not rejoice at injustice, but rejoices with the truth when right and truth prevail. Love bears all things, regardless of what comes, believes all things, looking for the best in each one, hopes all things, remaining steadfast during difficult times, endures all things without weakening. Love never fails. It never fades nor ends. But as for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for the gift of special knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, for our knowledge is fragmentary and incomplete. But when that which is complete and perfect comes, that which is incomplete and partial will pass away. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child, and when I became a man, I did away with childish things. For now, in the time of imperfection, we see in a mirror dimly, a blurred reflection, a riddle, an enigma. But then, when the time of perfection comes, we will see reality face to face. Now, I know in part, just in fragments, but then I will know fully, just as I have been fully known by God. And now there remain faith, abiding trust in God and his promises, hope, confident expectation of eternal salvation, love, unselfish love for others growing out of God's love for me. These three, the choicest graces, but the greatest of these is love. That's 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 13. You have to be sure that you are loving without the condition that things have to go your way in order for you to do it. Thank you for tuning in. Love y'all.